Hey guys, tonight we slip into a world of creaking floorboards, coal smoke, and secrets tucked into leather-bound volumes. You're a Victorian librarian, not the stern, bespectacled stereotype, but something a little more unexpected. You thread your way through echoing marble halls and past gaslit lamps with the weariness of someone who hasn't slept properly since the Crimean War ended. The quiet of your library isn't just for reading, it's for hiding. Hiding things, hiding people, hiding truths. And you, my friend, are very, very good at it. You balance a tray of tea and archival gloves as you duck into the back corridor. There's a coded knock from the boiler room. 3 quick, 1 slow. You don't answer. Not yet. You make them wait. Librarians have standards, even if we're harboring outlaws behind the anatomy section. The knock repeats, this time with a longer pause. Ah, that's the real signal. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me, what time is it where you are, and where are you listening from? Drop it in the comments. I love seeing how far we travel each night. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You push open the boiler room door. Steam hisses, curls around your ankles, and you step into the heat. There's nothing to see but copper pipes, but you know better. That third panel on the left isn't just an access hatch, it's a door. And tonight, someone's left it ajar. That never happens. Victorian libraries are supposed to be temples of knowledge, but in your world they're more like haunted castles, full of quiet drama, coded behavior, and a faint smell of mildew and morphine. The public sees only the neat stacks and polished floors. But once the last patron leaves, the real library wakes up. It's 1874 and you are in Kensington. Your badge says Assistant to the Archivist, but your actual duties include identifying forged travel documents in medieval manuscripts, translating margin doodles into Latin, and covering up for the assistant cataloger who sometimes forgets he's not supposed to sleep in the rare books vault. That's Leonard. He's sweet, but he snores like a broken Victrola. Outside, the streets clatter with horses and coughing chimney boys. Inside, it's quiet. Too quiet. You glance down the south corridor. Agnes is shelving volumes with her usual flair, precise but oddly theatrical, like she's auditioning for a role that doesn't exist. Rumor says she used to be on stage. Another rumor says she once killed a man with a sharpened quill. Neither has been confirmed. You pass through the reading room, nodding politely at Mr. Harrow, who's been studying the same 1862 census ledger for 3 days. He claims he's tracing his lineage. You suspect he's monitoring attendance. For whom, you're not sure, but last Thursday you found a rolled-up telegram in the margins. It simply read, "The whale breathes north." Historians still argue whether that was a code used by anti-monarchist bibliophiles or just a drunken annotation by a sailor turned genealogist. The truth is, librarians in your time are guardians of more than books. You remember the orientation. Preserve the collection. Protect the institution. Prevent the unraveling of polite society. They meant that last part literally. One misfiled scroll, and boom, an entire duchy might lose claim to its estate. Take the incident with the Montrose map. It looked innocent enough until a trainee shelved it under M instead of F for forgery. Within days, half of Parliament was screaming over border disputes, and someone tried to strangle a viscount with a silk cravat in the House of Lords. Which brings us to your desk. Well, desk is generous. It's really a repurposed coat check station, now a cluttered altar to your strange profession. There's a brass bell that no one ever rings, a mug full of stolen pens, and a drawer that locks itself, literally. You lost the key 2 years ago and just learned to stop trying. Occasionally, it hums. You hear a thud from the upper gallery, Probably just wind. Or Agnes again. Sometimes she accidentally knocks books over to lure the maintenance boy up for a flirt. Poor lad. He still thinks she's only 30. There's something about the quiet that makes you reflect. How did you end up here? You could have been a seamstress, a clerk, a schoolteacher, but something in you craved the quiet power of knowledge, the slow, velvety danger of being the only one in the room who knows everything, or at least knows where to look. The job came with warnings. Your supervisor, a man named Mr. Cleary, once handed you a black envelope during your first week and said, "Read this when you feel the library watching you." You laughed. Then, 2 months later, the temperature dropped 17 degrees in the map room and a whisper in ancient Greek said, "Do not misfile." You read the envelope that night. You've never spoken of it since. Oh, and yes, the rumors are true. Some Victorian librarians had tattoos, small ones behind the ear or along the ankle, a secret language in ink, mapping allegiances, rivalries, or affections. Yours is still unfinished. You're waiting until you earn your promotion, or until Leonard stops snoring. Whichever comes first. Downstairs, the boilers hiss louder. There's always someone watching, even when no one's there. The cat, Ethel, knows it too. She'll stare at corners like they owe her rent. If you listen closely enough, the library breathes. Not in a scary way, but more like a giant asleep. Maybe dreaming. Or maybe remembering. Tonight you've been assigned reshelving duty. Again. Which would be boring, except the section is Miscellaneous Dangerous Ephemera. Which, let's be honest, is librarian speak, for don't touch this unless you want to disappear. Half the drawers there don't open unless you hum in the right key, and one of them smells faintly like ozone and lilac. You gather your gloves, your lantern, and that small bell, just in case. The corridor darkens as you walk, each step echoing like a heartbeat down the long stone floor. Agnes calls after you. "Mind the third shelf. Last time it tried to bite me." You think she's joking. You hope she's joking. Either way, you're going in. You descend the back stairwell, each step dustier than the last, your lantern swinging like a nervous heartbeat. Miscellaneous Dangerous Ephemera isn't listed on the floor plan. Officially, it doesn't exist, just like the secret tea society that meets on Wednesday evenings in the staff lounge. But you know where it is, and more importantly, you know the code to enter. Sort of. You hum softly as you approach the iron-bound door at the base of the stair. It's an odd little melody, supposedly written by a librarian-turned-composer during the Napoleonic Wars. The door clicks open. The mechanism has a thing for minor chords. The room smells like cinnamon and mothballs, cozy and a bit alarming. Shelves sag under the weight of oddities that defy classification. A monocle that sees through walls. A half-melted wax figure with real teeth. A first edition of Gulliver's Travels that changes endings depending on the reader's mood. And there, in the corner, an item that wasn't there yesterday. A chipped teacup with a note that reads, "Wednesday, 8 p.m. sharp." Do not bring Leonard. You recognize the handwriting. It's from the Paper Wasp Society, a clandestine circle of librarians who gather weekly to exchange banned knowledge, illicit gossip, and recipes for curiously effective headache tonics. They formed sometime around 1852, depending on whom you ask, and always operate under plausible deniability. On paper, they're a crochet group. In practice, they're more like a cross between a book club and a quiet rebellion. And yes, there are code words. Naturally. You can't just knock on the staff room door and expect to waltz in. No, you need to answer a riddle scrawled in the margin of a 14th century herbology text, and if you get it wrong, the door locks for a week and someone replaces all your tea with fennel. This week's code word, spindlefish. No one knows why. Possibly a reference to that time Clara accidentally summoned a sea creature while trying to steep valerian. Historians still argue whether the beast was actually aquatic or just Leonard in a very damp cloak. You check the clock, 7:45. Time to prepare. The staff room looks perfectly ordinary by day. Wobbly chairs, biscuits that could dent porcelain. A copy of Punch from 1861 perpetually open to the same cartoon. But at precisely 8, the walls shift, or rather, the light does. A flicker, a hum, and the gas lamps burn with a cooler glow. The air thickens with bergamot and ink. The room stops pretending. You take your usual seat beneath the poster of Queen Victoria, her expression somehow more judgmental after dark. Around the table sit the usual suspects, Clara with her ever-tilted hat and encyclopedic knowledge of poisons. Mr. Mott, who has not spoken aloud in 7 years, but communicates exclusively through interpretive note-passing, and Miss Esterbrook, who carries 3 daggers and a Bible with a false bottom. The meeting begins with tea, naturally, poured in silence, as is tradition. You swirl your cup and wonder, will it be the truth blend this week, or the forget-me-not variant that erases your last 3 regrets? Both have their uses. Once, someone accidentally spilled the loose lips blend, and the next 20 minutes were an uncomfortable parade of confessions involving library janitors and the misfiling of Queen Charlotte's letters. Tonight's topic, unauthorized alterations in the dictionary. You hadn't heard. Apparently, someone's been changing definitions. Duty now reads, a debt to knowledge, not to law. Silence was briefly changed to a form of protest. No one has claimed responsibility. Everyone suspects Clara. Clara suspects everyone. This is the kind of trouble Victorian librarians get up to when left unsupervised, not wild car chases or shootouts. No, your mischief lives in margins and meaning. You start revolutions with footnotes, and sometimes you dance. Only on special nights, of course, birthdays, full moons, or when Miss Esterbrook wins a wager. She won tonight. Someone bet she couldn't quote from all the books banned by the 1847 school ordinance, backwards. She could, and did, without blinking. So now the gramophone is winding up and chairs are being cleared. Clara puts on a record labeled, "For use only after dusk." It's haunting, low and dreamy, like a lullaby for ghosts. You take a hand, maybe 2, and join a slow circular waltz around the tea-stained carpet. This is how you breathe. After hours, away from the whispers of shelves and the weight of secrets, just librarians and their strange little society swaying gently in a room the world forgot. You catch Mr. Mott smiling, just barely. A small, broken thing like someone remembering the steps to a dance he thought he'd forgotten. You wonder, sometimes, who he used to be. Before the silence, the dance ends, the tea cools. The spell, like most things in this world, begins to fray. But before the room returns to its fluorescent blandness, Clara leans over and whispers something in your ear. There's going to be a vote. On disclosure, your skin goes cold. Disclosure. That word hasn't been said aloud since the society nearly fractured over the 1869 mind-reading memoir incident. If they're considering unmasking the full extent of the knowledge vaults, things are more dangerous than you thought. You look around the table. Every face is neutral, tired, resigned. But behind their eyes, fire. Outside, a carriage rattles past. Inside, the air still hums with the taste of bergamot and danger. You stand, adjust your jacket, and step back into the corridor. The lamps resume their yellow glow. The staff room looks once again like nothing more than a sad room for tired workers. But now you know better. The next vote could change everything. You head for the main floor, back to your official duties. Someone's returned Faust again, And you're the only one trusted to check for alterations. Last time, someone replaced all the names with prime ministers, and no one noticed for a week. As you shelve the book, the note from under your teacup falls from your pocket. You catch it mid-air. It simply reads, "Check the Blue Atlas, page 273. Before midnight." You sigh. Of course, you were just going to sleep tonight. You trudge back toward the map room with the resigned gait of someone who knows the Blue Atlas isn't going to just sit there innocently on the shelf. No, it's going to do something. Something weird. Possibly something French. The library is never quite still at night. The air pulses. The shadows shift by fractions. You tell yourself it's just the flicker of gas lights and the occasional rat with an appetite for leather bindings. But you've seen too much to believe it's only that. Remember the time the globe spun by itself and pointed to Krakow? Yeah. That ended with Agnes climbing the bell tower in her petticoat and claiming dominion over all railway schedules. You reach the map room. The door creaks like a ship in distress, and the temperature drops 2 degrees as you enter. Always the same. It's not on purpose. It's just the room remembering. There, second shelf down, third from the left, the Blue Atlas. Its leather cover smells faintly of brine, and the gold lettering shimmers like a fish scale in low light. You slide it off the shelf and carry it to the long oak table beneath the stained glass window. You check your watch. 11:28. Plenty of time. Famous last words. You flip to page 273 and gasp, because page 273 isn't a map. It's a letter, handwritten in curling midnight ink that smells ever so faintly like lilac and iron. No signature, no address. Just, "Dearest you, I hope this finds you well, or at least awake. I do apologize for the riddle last week. Leonard was rather insistent. If you're reading this, the vote went through. We're opening the Whispering Room tomorrow. You'll need gloves, ginger biscuits, and the ability to lie convincingly. Good luck. Burn this." You do not burn it, obviously. Instead, you slip it into the hollow spine of Introduction to Dutch Topography, which no one ever checks out because it's deeply, passionately dull. Then, just as you're closing the atlas, you hear it. A sneeze, software muffled, definitely human. You snap the book shut and glance around. The room appears empty, but behind the long curtain by the south-facing window, you can just make out the shape of a boot. You cough loudly. The sneezer panics. There's a clatter, a yelp, and a thud. A sheepish voice follows. "I wasn't spying," it says. "I was dusting. Yes, dusting." You sigh. Leonard, honestly. He stumbles out from behind the curtain, red-faced and covered in spiderwebs. "I was just looking for that book on lighthouse foghorn acoustics," he mumbles, avoiding eye contact. "Were you, though?" you ask, folding your arms. "Or were you curious about the paper wasp's sudden interest in the Whispering Room?" He gasps dramatically. "You know about the vote. Leonard, you wrote the code word for this week. Spindlefish." He beams. "Ah, so it was a good one." You shake your head, half exasperated, half impressed. "Well, if you're done eavesdropping, help me put this atlas away. And stop sneezing near 200-year-old parchment." Leonard sneezes again in reply. Possibly on purpose. Together, you reshelve the atlas. He glances at you, eyes wide. "Do you think they'll really open it?" "The Whispering Room. It's not up to us. But it's forbidden." "Everything is," you reply. "That's what makes it interesting." The Whispering Room is more rumor than reality. Allegedly built during the reign of George IV, it's said to contain voices trapped in old correspondence, constantly whispering their secrets through the cracks in the walls. A cautionary tale for chatty scribes, a metaphor for institutional memory, Or, if you believe Mr. Mott's notes, an actual physical room beneath the archive, sealed by brick and oath in 1839, after a patron allegedly read every letter ever written and tried to rewrite the monarchy in iambic pentameter. Historians still argue whether the room ever existed, or whether the tales are just metaphor for government censorship dressed up in creepy ambiance. But the librarians, you know better. You remember the old floor plans, the tiny square with no label. You remember the echoing knock that sometimes comes from beneath your feet when no one else is walking. You part ways with Leonard at the stairwell. He's off to document a shipment of assorted political pamphlets, which we both know means 3 crates of socialist poetry and 1 extremely rude letter addressed to Disraeli. You, on the other hand, decide to pay a visit to the card catalog. The real one, not the tall brass cabinets at the front of the library for the public. No, this is the secret index, tucked behind a false wall near the cloakroom, accessible only if you press the letter Q while whistling Rule Britannia backwards. You don't even question it anymore. Inside, the cabinet drawers are narrower, the cards older and stained with wax. This is where the real records live. The ones that list who borrowed which cursed object, who checked out the weather machine disguised as an umbrella, who, briefly, accidentally married a manuscript. You flip through the cards looking for references to the whispering room. You find 4. Each simply says, "See also, silence." The 5th card is newer, slightly crumpled as if someone wrote it in a hurry. It reads, "Whispering Room. Key hidden inside the history of umbrellas, 4th floor, west wing, shelf 9B. Bring matches." You sigh. Of course. Matches. Everything dangerous in this place involves either fire or Leonard. You make a mental note. Tomorrow, at dawn, you'll visit shelf 9B. For now, your shift is over. You hang your lantern on the wall hook and step outside. The air is crisp. Fog curls along the cobblestones. You hear distant hooves, the soft click of gas lamps being extinguished, and somewhere in the distance, the faintest whisper of your name. You don't turn around. You never do. You wake with the taste of parchment on your tongue and the suspicion that someone has borrowed your boots. The dawn sky over London hangs low and gray, the kind of weather that makes bread go sad and curls droop. You wrap yourself in your second warmest shawl. Your warmest still smells like ghost pepper marmalade, thanks to Leonard's jam experiment, and trudge back toward the library. 4th floor, west wing, shelf 9B. That's today's objective. The key to the whispering room, allegedly nestled somewhere inside the history of umbrellas, which you happen to know has never once been checked out, cited, or even dusted, which, in librarian terms, makes it highly suspicious. The library is still technically closed, but rules bend for staff, especially for staff with lockpicks. You slide the bolt, slip inside, and are instantly wrapped in the hush only found in the early hours. A silence thick as syrup. Books inhale slowly. The clock ticks like it's considering each second before releasing it. You climb. The west wing staircase groans with every step. Its balustrade is carved with tiny faces, allegedly Greek muses, though one definitely looks like Prime Minister Peel with a toothache. By the time you reach the 4th floor, your calves are considering unionizing. Shelf 9B is tucked between archaic weather devices and gentlemen's compacts, 1701 to 1849. You locate the history of umbrellas with embarrassing ease. Blue spine, fraying title, faint smell of mildew and citrus. You open it. First page, a blank. Second page, a drawing of an umbrella that seems, alarmingly, to wink. Third page, success. A hollowed-out compartment barely large enough for a matchbox, and inside it, a small brass key wrapped in oilcloth. You exhale, carefully. The key is heavier than it looks, cold, and humming faintly, either with power or from being next to Leonard's poetry shelf too long. You tuck it inside your coat pocket and resist the urge to look behind you. No one's there. Probably. Time to find the door. You head for the sub-archives. This level is even older than the rest. Part cellar, part storage, part exorcism site. Only once, and it was more of a misunderstanding with a Catholic intern. You navigate past crates of misplaced treaties, misprinted almanacs, and one mysterious barrel labeled "Nuns Do Not Open." The floor plan from memory puts the Whispering Room beneath the northwest quadrant, which is, of course, where the floor dips slightly and the air begins to smell like cloves and confessions. You find it behind a row of false spines, the complete etiquette of salting fish, volumes 1 through 13. You press gently on volume 6, and the wall slides open with a soft sigh. There, nestled in the gloom, is the door, or rather the hatch. A round brass portal, etched with words in Latin, Greek, and something that looks like shorthand for "This is a terrible idea." You insert the key. It resists petulantly, but turns. The hatch hisses open. You are met with darkness and a descending spiral staircase, lit only by the flicker of wall sconces that ignite as you pass. The descent is silent except for your own breathing and the occasional creak that sounds suspiciously like laughter. Probably just the walls. At the base, the Whispering Room. It's smaller than you imagined. Circular. Walls lined with scroll tubes, quills, and bundles of unopened correspondence. In the center, a wide wooden table. No chairs, no windows. Just a faint murmur like 1,000 voices speaking just out of earshot. You step inside. The moment your foot crosses the threshold, the voices grow sharper. Not louder, sharper. You can suddenly make out snatches of conversation. "He'll never know the last page was forged. She told me the ink came from crushed beetles, but I knew better. Don't trust the man with the mole. He writes backwards. It's disorienting, like trying to read 17 footnotes at once. You steady yourself against the table. Beneath your fingers you feel grooves, names, dates, messages carved in haste or desperation. And in the center, a brass plate with a single sentence. What is remembered lives. You swallow hard. This room remembers everything. You pull out the gloves you brought, good, sturdy ones, reinforced at the fingertips, and begin sifting through the letters. They're unfiled, just heaps and bundles tied with faded string. Some are unopened, others have been carefully resealed. You recognize a few names. Early librarians, suspected spies, one possibly a time-traveling nun. And then you find it. A letter addressed to you. You don't open it right away. You sit on the floor, legs tucked under you, and just listen. To the voices, the whispers, the old secrets breathing softly from parchment and dust. You can't make sense of them all, but you hear enough to understand. The Whispering Room isn't cursed. Not exactly. It's crowded. It holds every truth people were too afraid to say out loud. Every secret they feared would die with them. Every confession mailed to the wrong address on purpose. This is the memory of the library itself. You open the letter. To the one who listens, this room must never be emptied, never archived, never silenced. What it holds is not for power. It is for presence, for knowing. You are the keeper now. Speak nothing of this. Tell no one, except perhaps Clara. You fold the letter carefully and slide it back into the bundle. The voices have quieted now, or maybe you've simply learned how to listen without panic. Your job is not to organize this, or to expose it. Your job is to guard it. You leave the room, close the hatch, lock it again with the brass key, which now looks slightly warmer to the touch, as though it remembers being used. Back in the archive hallway, you notice someone's left you a thermos of tea, ginger and lemon, Clara's blend. You sip it, sitting on an overturned crate, and feel the warmth curl through your ribs. Tomorrow, the others will ask if you found anything. You'll say, "Nothing I could read," and that will be enough. You wake up the next day with an itch behind your left eye, the kind of sensation that either means you're developing a new allergy or you've just inherited a library-based psychic burden. Given the events in the whispering room, you're leaning toward the latter. The brass key now hangs, improbably, from a chain that didn't exist the day before, looped around your neck like it's always belonged there. Typical. Today is Tuesday, which means it's officially unofficial cataloging day. On the surface, this involves normal tasks, logging titles, checking condition reports, filing bookworm activity. But unofficially, you know Tuesday is the day secret societies send decoy donations, riddled with clues and misprints so precise you could slice a cucumber with them. At precisely 9 minutes past 9, a delivery arrives. The cart is pushed by a courier wearing a tweed cap, far too large for his head, and whistling something that sounds like a Gregorian chant trying to be cheerful. "Donation for the restricted shelf," he mumbles, before vanishing back into the fog. You peer at the crates. One is labeled harpsichord sheet music, possibly cursed, and the other says, in shaky ink, Diary of the Unbuttoned Anarchist. Clara appears just as you're prying the second lid open. She's holding a stack of overdue notices and a look that says she hasn't slept in days. "Did you take the key?" she asks flatly, skipping all the pleasantries. You blink. "I did." Clara sighs, then hands you a tin of ginger biscuits. "You'll need these more than I do now, and possibly a cloak. They always ask for a cloak." You love how she says they, like the library is some ancient collective consciousness, casually demanding outerwear. You glance back at the crate. Inside, nestled in velvet, is a leather-bound volume with no title. You flip it open and freeze, because the first page isn't ink, it's hair. Actual woven strands forming cursive letters that read, "By reading this, you agree to remember." You shut the book very slowly. Clara doesn't flinch. "This came from the Lantern chapter," she says. Your stomach drops. The Lantern chapter isn't in the library's official roster, or even in the Paper Wasp Codex. It's a fringe group, possibly defunct, possibly hiding in plain sight, devoted to illuminating forgotten knowledge, which, historically, has involved everything from fire-starting spells to decoding marginalia, written in pig Latin, and cough syrup. Historians still argue whether the Lantern chapter was ever officially recognized, or if it was a spontaneous offshoot formed by 3 insomniac librarians and a haunted lampshade in 1853. Clara gestures to the book. "You're going to want to check the footnotes. Just not out loud." You nod and begin the quiet, careful process of cataloging. The book is a marvel of sensory chaos. Each page changes temperature depending on the reader's mood. The margin commentary occasionally hisses if you question its accuracy. One chapter appears only when you place a spoon on the binding. You try not to think about what's stored in the spoon archive. Halfway through, you find a note tucked between pages 48 and 49. It's folded into an origami crow and smells faintly of ink and citrus. Midnight. Rating room. Bring the key. Bring Clara. Leave Leonard behind. L. You both stare at the note, then at each other, then at the clock. It's not even noon. Leonard appears in the doorway a moment later, holding a potted fern and looking oddly pleased with himself. "You'll never guess what I found in the herbarium," he begins, but you both shush him with practiced efficiency. "You're not coming tonight," Clara says. Leonard blinks. "But, no. But what if I bring scones?" Still no. Leonard pouts and retreats. You sigh. He'll probably follow you anyway. He once shadowed an entire Freemason tea ceremony just to find out if they used lemon curd or jam. They used neither. It was disappointing for everyone. That night, just before midnight, you and Clara slip into the reading room. It's vast and dimly lit, all arching beams and echo. You walk past ancient globes, locked glass cases, and one suspiciously humming bookshelf labeled Unsorted Threats. You find Elle in the southeast corner by the fireplace. He, or she, it's hard to tell, is wrapped in a midnight blue cloak with gold threading that catches the light like falling stars. They don't speak at first, just gesture for you to sit. Clara does so with ease. You remain standing, holding the key. Elle finally speaks. You've been to the room. You nod. And you listened. You nod again. Then you're ready. Ready for what? You ask. Elle doesn't answer. Instead, they produce a scroll and roll it out across the table. It's a floor plan. Of your library, but older. Stranger. It shows chambers that no longer exist, or never officially did. Rooms labeled things like speculative folio vault, inkwell of reversed intent, and custard files unauthorized. In the center of the scroll, a chamber labeled the lantern. It's still here, Clara whispers. Elle points to the corner of the map. You'll need to go through the banned poetry archives, behind the Wallace sonnets. There's a switch in the floorboards. Let me guess, you mutter. It only opens when someone misquotes Byron. Elle smiles faintly. Exactly. You spend the next 2 hours cross-referencing the map, taking notes, and pretending this is all perfectly ordinary. At one point, a grandfather clock in the corner strikes 13. None of you comment. As you're leaving, Elle catches your arm. The whispering room won't be silent forever, they say. It remembers, yes, but sometimes it speaks, and sometimes it acts. You feel the key grow warm beneath your shirt. Back at home, you dream of a room full of floating pages, of whispered names, of a candle that never goes out. When you wake, there's ink on your fingertips. You didn't fall asleep writing. You didn't fall asleep reading. And yet, there it is, one word, written across your palm in curling Victorian script. Soon. The following morning, you enter the library with the cautious optimism of someone who suspects their workplace may be sentient. The key around your neck no longer burns, but it's definitely pulsing. Just a slow, steady thrum, like a heartbeat, or a ticking clock that forgot which direction time is supposed to go. You pass Leonard in the lobby. He's feeding the fern marmalade again and humming a funeral dirge. You offer a vague smile. He nods solemnly, as if to say, I know what you're about to do, and I've pre-labeled your emergency preserves. Today's mission, the Wallace Sonnets. Not because they're good poetry, heavens no. They've been banned since 1871 for causing fainting spells, unprovoked gallantry, and an alarming spike in marriage proposals. But Elle said the switch was behind them. You trudge up to the restricted verse vault, hidden behind a rotating globe of Mesopotamia. It smells like sandalwood and guilt. The poetry in here is shelved under conditions stricter than most noble titles. You pass such gems as elegies for taxidermia ducks and ballads of mild treason, each bound in velvet and regret. The Wallace sonnets are buried in a locked cage marked Handle with Ridicule. You unlock it using the standard 5-part code, recite a limerick, cough twice, and wink at the portrait of Lady Blanchard. She winks back. No one talks about that part. Once inside, you scan the back paneling for inconsistencies. A few floorboards creak in suspicious iambic pentameter. Finally, you spot it. A small knot in the wood, worn smooth from furtive touches. You press. Click. A panel in the floor flips open, revealing a narrow spiral staircase descending into ink-stained gloom. The air smells of mildew and melancholy. You descend. Halfway down, the walls shift from wood to stone. Carvings begin to appear, librarian sigils, obscure punctuation marks, and one suspiciously detailed drawing of a squirrel riding a velocipede. Historians still argue whether that was meant as a warning or a family crest. At the bottom, you arrive in a chamber that looks exactly like what a forbidden Victorian literary society would design on a sugar high. Lanterns float in the air, actual floating, casting a buttery golden glow over a round table made of inlaid lapis and ash wood. Around it sit 12 high-backed chairs, each carved with a different motif: quill, compass, spiral shell, key, beetle, candle, spectacles, fox, inkblot, fiddle, feather, and frog. The 13th chair is empty, and it's yours. Clara is already there, arms crossed, eyes scanning the room like she's memorizing the pattern of betrayal. Elle is at the table's head, flipping through a ledger so old it might have been bound before fire. We don't usually induct new members without a vote, Elle says mildly, but the room chose you. We listen when the room speaks. You sit. The chair adjusts beneath you, not mechanically, but with the unsettling intuition of an old cat deciding where to nap. Elle gestures, and the others begin to speak. Not aloud. They tap fingers, slide notes, draw symbols in the condensation on their teacups. It's an old language, one built from silence, patience, and a deep distrust of the Dewey Decimal System. You do your best to follow. It seems there's a problem. One of the memory rooms is leaking. Not metaphorically, literally. Knowledge is escaping. Clara confirms it. Yesterday, a patron in Children's accidentally read a 1742 treaty between rival cheese guilds. It was hidden inside Peter Rabbit's pie predicament. We had to give her 3 scoops of forgetful fudge and an hour of interpretive ballet. You raise your eyebrows. And the problem is, the fudge supply is low, she replies grimly. Elle points to you. You're going to the scriptorium. The word lands with a thud in your chest. The scriptorium isn't just another secret room. It's the place where unfinished thoughts go to fester, where drafts linger, where forgotten footnotes build nests and whisper about revenge. If the whispering room remembers truth, the scriptorium traps potential, every half-written theory, every hypothesis never peer-reviewed, every poem that died after the second stanza. You nod slowly. Before you leave, Elle hands you a small silver bell. Only ring this if you meet the archivist, they warn. And only if she asks your birth hour. If she asks for tea, just run. You and Clara walk the route together, through the folio crypts, past the hall of misfiled metaphors, down a narrow passage marked pending concepts. The walls here hum with static. Your skin prickles. The entrance is a mirrored door with no handle. You say the phrase Elle taught you, semicolon's mercy, and the door shivers open. The scriptorium is vast. Endless rows of desks. Incomplete notes float mid-air, scribbled in different inks and handwritings. You pass a haiku that trails off mid-thought, a lecture on goat ethics annotated in 5 dialects of Welsh, and a love letter addressed only to dearest ambiguity. In the center of the room, the leak, a crack in the stone floor, faint golden mist rising from it, raw memory, untethered, curious, dangerous. Already a few pages have drifted close, inhaled it, and begun changing shape. A note once about pigeon breeding is now a manifesto for feathered autonomy. Clara frowns. We need to seal it. Fast. You pull out the key. It glows faintly, then brighter as you approach the crack. The golden mist recoils. You kneel, press the key to the floor. There's a low thrumming, and then a snap, like a quill breaking. The crack seals. The mist vanishes. The pages shudder and return to dormancy. Nice work, Clara murmurs. And then you hear it. Footsteps, light, deliberate, coming from behind the bookcase labeled Inadvisable Experiments. The archivist steps into view. She's tall, pale, wearing gloves made of old catalog cards and a dress that rustles like moth wings. Her eyes are unreadable. Her voice is like velvet over ice. "Tea?" she asks. You drop the bell. It hits the floor with a chime that makes the walls warp. The archivist hisses. Clara grabs your hand. You run. Back up the mirrored hall through forgotten stairwells into the nearest fiction section, Regency werewolf courtships, and slam the access panel behind you. You don't stop until you reach the break room. Only then do you let go of Clara's hand. You're both breathless, sweating, alive. Next time, she gasps, you ring the bell before she offers tea. You nod. You'll remember that. You're not sure how long you sit there in the break room, your lungs burning and your pulse still trying to process the phrase, tea with the archivist. Clara is already halfway through a banana she swiped from Leonard's fruit drawer. You're tempted to remind her it was labeled Tuesday only, but frankly, after what just happened, he owes you both a banana and a small parade. The vending machine flickers in the corner. One of its buttons, licorice buttons and licentious ballads, is jammed, probably for everyone's safety. You get up slowly and splash water on your face in the staff sink, which is rumored to be blessed by a retired monk who used to catalog weather-related metaphors. The water's cold, refreshing, vaguely minty. You assume that's normal. Clara, you finally say, voice hoarse. Why does the archivist ask for tea? She doesn't look up. Because it's the only question that doesn't feel like a threat. You blink. I don't follow. She sighs and wraps the banana peel into a tight coil. No one knows what the archivist is. She's been here since before the East Wing had windows. She appears when ideas get too volatile, when the library's balance starts tipping toward chaos. And if she ever stops asking for tea and starts asking why you're here, you run. There's never a second question. Historians still argue whether the archivist is a ghost, a psychic construct, or simply an overworked graduate student who ascended into myth. You shiver, and yet, despite it all, a small part of you wants to see her again, to ask your own questions. Not about tea, of course, but about memory, purpose, the strange dreamlike logic that governs the library's secrets. That part of you is going to get you in trouble. Later that day, Leonard corners you near the herbals and hexes section. He's holding a clipboard, a half-eaten crumpet, and what appears to be a monocle on a stick. I've been doing some research, he whispers, eyes darting. Is this about the fern again? Number well. Partially, but mostly about you. He waves the monocle dramatically. You've been, how shall I put this, initiated. You glance around. Leonard, he leans closer. I found your name etched into the spine of a book of holding, in lemon juice. It only reveals itself under moonlight or when someone misquotes Keats. You stare. How did you even discover that? He shrugs. I was eating meringue. It got complicated. You sigh. What do you want, Leonard? He lowers the monocle. To help, obviously. You're about to decline when he pulls a folded parchment from his vest. I've been tracing references to the Lantern chapter through the old staff hearsay logs. The staff hearsay logs are an informal archive, a collection of rumors, overheard snippets, and strange incidents scribbled down by generations of librarians, too polite to gossip, but too curious to let things go. Think of it as a conspiracy board with better grammar. You take the parchment. The notes are erratic but clear. Lanterns flickering during daylight hours, June 1862, section of the periodicals room briefly replaced by obsidian stairs, July 1874, murmuring in the language index, suspects reciting poems backward. At the bottom, a single phrase. The third key wakes in ash. You glance at Leonard. What does that mean? No idea, he beams, but I'm guessing it involves you, fire, and at least one inconvenient revelation. He's probably right. That evening, you head back into the archives, this time alone. Clara's assisting with the cursed thesaurus recataloguing, and Leonard is busy organizing a secret chess club for sentient footnotes. You follow the path from the parchment, down into the ash wing, a mostly forgotten extension of the library, used long ago to store documents damaged by fire or politically inconvenient weather. The air is thick with soot and nostalgia. Your footsteps echo across stone and silence. At the far end of the wing, you find a door. Small, round, metal-rimmed, painted with a faded symbol you recognize from the Lantern chapter map. A key inside a flame. It opens at your touch. Inside is a narrow chamber. No shelves, no scrolls, just a single pedestal upon which rests a simple black box. You approach cautiously. The air hums. The box has no latch, no seam, no instructions. You place your palm on the lid. Nothing. You try the key. It glows. The box clicks and opens. Inside is a second key. Not brass, not silver. This one is obsidian, smooth, impossibly cold, etched with swirling letters that seem to shift when you aren't looking. And beneath it, a note. Just one line. Memory can be stored. Memory can be stolen. You pocket the key, close the box, and turn to leave. But you aren't alone. A figure stands in the doorway, cloaked, face hidden. You freeze. They speak. You've taken the second. The third is not yours to find. You manage to steady your voice. Who are you? A pause. Caretaker, for now. And then they vanish. Literally. Not melodramatically. Not with a swirl of wind and echo. Just gone. You stagger back to the lantern room. Clara is waiting, arms folded. Let me guess, she says. You've got a new key, a cryptic warning, and a fresh layer of ash in your boots. You nod. She sighs. Fine, let's go over it. But first, she reaches into her coat and pulls out 2 chocolate biscuits and a note. It's addressed to you. You unfold it. One word written in the same tight script as the first. Begin. It's after midnight when you finally sit down in the whispering room again. Just you, Clara, the second key, and a half-stale biscuit you're too jittery to finish. The lanterns flicker around you in that way they do when the library wants to watch, without seeming nosy. Your fingers brush over the obsidian key again. It's still cold, as if it never knew warmth existed. Across the table, Clara taps her pen against a notebook with more crossings out than words. So, 2 keys, 1 talking box, 1 cryptic stranger, and now the word begin. She raises an eyebrow. Did we not already begin? You shrug. Maybe not the right thing. She sighs through her nose. You realize this means you're now part of a prophecy we didn't even know existed. You nod. And also maybe cursed. Oh, that's a given. You look around the whispering room, its walls dense with the layered mumbling of lifetimes past. If you squint, you can almost make out full sentences in the shadows. Complaints about overdue fines from 1823, a love confession to a book about clams, a list of dangerous synonyms for eager. Clara, you say slowly, what do you know about memory extraction? She straightens. You've been reading the old method scrolls? Number, I've been hearing things. The archivist, when she was close, I felt something, like something was slipping out of my head. Just a little. Clara leans forward, her voice low. There's an old theory, mostly fringe, mostly denied. Victorian librarians supposedly created a process, something between hypnosis, scent association, and tonal resonance, that allowed them to remove memories from patrons' minds. You blink. And store them, Clara nods, in ink, specially treated, distilled from forget-me-not root, squid pigment, and sometimes something stranger. Historians still argue whether the third ingredient was mercury or remorse. Your mouth goes dry. So every time someone forgets something in here, Clara finishes for you. It might not be forgetting. It might be removal. The silence that follows is thick. You realize that somewhere, probably not far from where you're sitting, are little glass bottles with corks, labeled not with titles, but with memories, actual experiences, siphoned from patrons who brushed too close to the truth. And suddenly, that line from the Ashwing note makes a lot more sense. Memory can be stored. Memory can be stolen. You lean back. So what's the third key for? Clara's quiet a moment. Then, there's a theory. Of course there is. Some believe there's a room, not officially on the map. A room where all stored memories are kept, organized, guarded, possibly even curated. It's called the Mnemosyne Vault. You blink. Like the Titan of Memory? Clara nods. Exactly. But no one's ever found it. Or at least, no one who remembers finding it. A chill crawls down your spine. Later that night you dream. Of keys and corridors. Of hands made of paper gently plucking thoughts from your head like ripe fruit. Of whispers in your own voice asking, "Do you remember who you were before this place?" You wake before dawn. The library is still. Even the books are asleep. You find Leonard in the south alcove, feeding the fern sugar cubes and teaching it French. He looks up. "You've seen something," he says simply. You nod. "I need to find the vault." He frowns. "That's not a good idea." "I didn't say it was," he sighs. "You'll need the third key." I gathered. "And you'll need a map." That catches you off guard. "There's a map?" Leonard walks to an old globe in the corner, one that spins not with countries but with smells. It's best not to ask. He twists it to a section marked Cinnamon/Despair. A hidden compartment clicks open. Inside is a scroll, wrapped in blue ribbon, smelling faintly of old ink and lavender. He hands it to you. "This will lead you to the threshold." You don't ask what that is. You can already tell from the capitalization that it's going to be dramatic. You thank him, tuck the map into your coat, and turn. But Leonard grabs your sleeve. "If you go to the vault, you may not like what you find." You pause. "Meaning?" He hesitates. "What if some of your memories aren't yours?" The question drops into your brain like a stone into a pond. Ripples, reverberations, because suddenly you realize there are gaps. Not obvious ones, just hazy moments. An afternoon you can't quite recall. A birthday you feel emotionally connected to but have no images of. A phrase someone once said, "When the fifth lantern hums, don't look left." That makes your stomach drop, though you've never heard it before. Or have you? Later that evening, you and Clara gather in the lantern room. You unroll the map. It's blank. Of course it is. But then Clara brings over a lantern and sets it beside the parchment. Slowly, lines begin to appear, drawn not in ink, but in shadows, paths, names, symbols, a door marked with 3 keys, and a phrase, "Only the unremembered may enter." You trace it with your fingertip. Clara reads aloud, "So, what does that mean?" You're already figuring it out. "It means," you whisper, "to get in. We'll have to forget something." Clara stares at you, and then, very softly, she says, "I'm not sure I want to lose anything." "Neither do I. But we're going anyway, aren't we?" You nod. "Because of course you are. Because the vault is calling. And some part of you remembers why. You don't sleep that night. You try. Climb into your bunk in the staff quarters, surround yourself with the usual defensive ring of mystery novels and old wool socks. But your brain won't let go. It keeps looping through the map, the keys, and the unsettling lines still echoing behind your eyes. Only the unremembered may enter. By morning, you've convinced yourself of 3 things. 1. The vault is real. 2. It holds more than forgotten memories. 3. It doesn't want to be found. You find Clara already awake, in the process of bribing the East Wing's notoriously sullen coffee urn. She doesn't even say good morning, just hands you a cup and asks, "So what are we forgetting?" "Nothing permanent," you say, perhaps too quickly. "Just enough to pass." She frowns. "That's not how forgetting works." She's right, of course. Victorian librarians might have developed memory manipulation, but they weren't gentle about it. There are whispered stories of interns waking up believing they were 19th century chimney sweeps or that tea only came in solid form. You glance down at the obsidian key. It's pulsing faintly now, as though it knows what comes next. "Let's go," you say. Clara doesn't argue. She just drops 2 sugar cubes into her coat pocket, for luck, and follows you through the morning-hushed corridors. The library is quieter than usual, almost reverent, as if it too is holding its breath. You head for the threshold. The map leads you through places even seasoned librarians pretend don't exist. The basement of mismatched thoughts, the corridor of mild regrets, and a room containing only 12 armchairs that all somehow smell like your grandmother's purse. You walk without speaking, passing sealed doors labeled in Latin, Greek, and one particularly aggressive dialect of Welsh. Finally, you arrive. A simple wooden door. No handle, no sign. Just 3 keyholes, 1 brass, 1 silver, 1 black as night. Clara exhales. "So, this is it." You nod. One by one, you insert the keys. Each one clicks softly, and with the third, the door creaks inward, revealing a narrow stairwell spiraling downward, lit by what seems to be bioluminescent dust motes. The air smells faintly of cloves, chalk, and the feeling you get when someone calls your name from behind, but no one's there. You descend. The stairs go on longer than they should. You lose track of time, of space. The only sound is your own breath, and even that feels borrowed. Eventually, you reach the vault. It's not a room. It's a space, vast, silent, glowing with soft amber light. Shelves stretch upward beyond view, each lined with tiny vials, suspended as if by invisible threads. Each vial contains a swirling wisp of light, memory distilled into physical form. You step forward. A voice echoes from nowhere and everywhere. "Welcome, unremembered." You freeze. Clara squeezes your hand. A figure materializes, tall, shrouded in robes of midnight blue. Their face is not visible, only the impression of age and calm. They speak again. "What do you seek?" You manage to say the truth. About the library, about me. The figure tilts its head. Then you must forget. It gestures. A pedestal rises from the ground. Upon it, a vial, empty. Your name is etched into the glass. You swallow. "What am I giving up?" The figure doesn't answer, because, of course, that would make it too easy. Clara steps forward. "We'll both do it." The figure turns. Only the seeker may offer. Only one may pass. You turn to her. "You don't have to." "Stop," she says. "Just don't come back a stranger." You nod. Then reach for the vial. The moment your fingers touch it, a sharp jolt runs through your mind. Not painful, just clarifying. And then, a flicker. A childhood memory vanishing. The name of your second-grade teacher. The scent of your first apartment. Gone. But in its place, clarity. The library opens itself to you. You see all at once the timeline, how the Lantern chapter was born from a splinter sect of information protectors during a riot in 1848, how they embedded secrets into cataloging codes, lantern signals, and architectural illusions, how memories were stored for safekeeping when they were deemed too dangerous to keep inside a living brain. And you see something else. You've been here before. Not just once, dozens of times, always forgetting, always returning. A loop not of time, but of identity. The vault holds fragments of every visit, the previous yous, the choices you made, the moments you hesitated, the time you almost stayed, the time you ran, and now, this time, the time you remembered. The figure speaks once more. What you know, you must carry. What you forget, you must earn. And then the shelves part. A door appears. Clara watches you, wide-eyed. You okay? I think so. You lie. Because something is still shifting in your brain. Not gone exactly, just rearranged. You step through the door and enter the memory index. It's beautiful, more light than space, words floating in amber, names, faces, conversations once thought lost, books that never existed outside a single person's mind, stored here forever. In the center, a table, upon it, a book, bound in soft leather. No title. You open it. Inside, your name. In dozens of scripts, each on its own page, a ledger of lives, versions of you. You turn to the last page. It's blank, and beneath it, a simple sentence. Write what matters. Your hand trembles. You look at Clara. She nods, and so you begin to write. Not everything, just the truth. The quill is heavier than it looks. Dark wood carved with tiny swirling letters, none of them in any script you recognize. It hums faintly in your hand like a violin string after the bow has passed. As you press its tip to the page, the ink appears without dipping. Midnight blue, warm to the touch, alive in a way that makes your skin prickle. You write slowly. Your name, then your memory of arriving, of the 3 keys, of Clara's voice the first time she called your name in the lantern room. You write the truth you've glimpsed, not all of it, not the tangled web of secret orders and mnemonic rituals, but enough to fix your place in it, enough to leave behind a version of yourself that future yous might one day recognize. The page drinks in every word. When you finish, the book closes itself. The room hums in approval, as if the library has accepted your offering. And just like that, the door behind you fades away. You turn. Clara's still there, though her eyes look distant, unfocused, like she's staring through fog. You were gone for almost 2 hours, she says, voice quiet. I was writing. She blinks. Writing what? That's when you realize she doesn't remember the vault. Not entirely, just like the notes warned. The vault doesn't let knowledge leave unfiltered. Something always slips. It's okay, you say. You stayed with me. That's what matters. She narrows her eyes. Did I cry? No. Did you cry? You hesitate. Maybe a little. She snorts. Good. You needed that. As you retrace your steps back through the spiral stair and past the room of regretful chairs, you both fall into a thoughtful silence. The air feels different now, charged, almost aware. When you pass the globe that smells like cinnamon and despair, it spins on its own. Once, Clara mutters, "Show off." That night, you both gather in the whispering room. This time, you're not alone. Leonard is there, sipping something too green to be safe. The clock keeper is asleep in the corner, her cheek resting on a notebook filled with alchemical equations and poorly drawn cats. Even Rupert the cat librarian makes an appearance, knocking over a chessboard and then pretending it was the wind. It's a quiet gathering, a secret one, a tradition none of you acknowledge aloud, but which happens every time a librarian returns from the threshold. You sit. Clara passes you a cup of something that tastes like melted marzipan and ash, and which makes your ears warm. "So," Leonard says eventually, "did you see the ledger?" You nod. He raises an eyebrow. "Did you add to it?" Another nod. He smiles faintly. "Then you've done more than most." There's a pause. Clara breaks it. "We need to talk about the lanterns." Leonard's smile fades. "What about them?" She leans forward. They've started humming, not just glowing. Low-pitched, almost like a song. And they're getting brighter, hotter. Leonard sighs. "I was afraid of that." You glance between them. Afraid of what, exactly? He folds his hands. There's a signal, a call, old as the library itself, buried in the lantern code, hidden in the frequencies they emit. When they begin to hum in harmony, it means something's waking up. Clara frowns. Waking what up? Leonard doesn't answer. He just walks over to a locked cabinet behind the bookshelves, mutters something in High Victorian, which sounds suspiciously like he's scolding the cabinet in rhyme, and pulls out a tattered folder labeled Protocol Chrysanthemum. You can tell by the dust alone that this is not a protocol one activates lightly. He places it on the table and opens it. Inside, schematics, faded notes, a map of the library with symbols you've never seen, spirals, eyes, something that looks suspiciously like a teaspoon. And at the bottom, a single sentence. If the lanterns sing, the door is near. You swallow. What door? Leonard's eyes meet yours. The last one. Clara looks like she might throw her tea. "There's another door," she hisses. Leonard nods. "The original, the one that leads to whatever it is the library was built to protect, or imprison." No one agrees. Historians still argue whether the door was meant to keep things out, or to keep us in. "Lovely," you mutter. "So how do we find it?" Leonard flips the map. On the back is a musical score, 7 notes, a melody, simple, haunting. Clara hums it, absent-mindedly. The lantern on the table flares white. You all freeze. Leonard whispers, "It's begun." The next few days pass in a blur. You and Clara begin tracking the lanterns, logging their tones, their patterns, the way they shift depending on what books are nearby. You notice a correlation between volumes on chaos theory and brighter flares. Books on etiquette seem to make them flicker nervously, like they're trying to mind their manners. Meanwhile, Leonard teaches you how to shield your thoughts, how to keep memory snatching from happening accidentally. He gives you a ring carved from forgotten oak and a phrase in a dead dialect of Old Archivish, anamnesia enclava. You're told never to say it in the bath wing. No one will explain why. Clara just shudders and mimes tentacles. You begin to dream of lanterns, endless halls of them, glowing in time to heartbeats. Sometimes yours, sometimes not. And in every dream you feel it drawing closer. The door, the one even the library fears. It's not on any map, but you know the lanterns are leading you to it. Whether you're ready or not, the dream begins the same every night now. You walk through the library, but it's different. Larger, darker, impossibly old. The books are whispers instead of pages, and the shelves lean inward like they're listening. A lantern pulses at every corner, humming that 7-note melody, slower each time. As you reach the final corridor, there it is, the door. It's not made of wood or metal or stone. It's made of memory, layer upon layer of forgotten thoughts, tangled and fused into something solid. You always wake up before you can touch it, and every time you remember just a little less of the dream. By now, you've accepted 2 things. 1, the door is very real. 2, it's not supposed to be opened. But there's a third truth scratching at the edge of your thoughts. Someone is already trying. The lanterns confirm it. Their brightness increases near certain shelves, always shelves with missing books. Not stolen, Not misfiled. Gone. Ripped from existence like they never were. That's not natural. Even this library, chaotic as it is, doesn't forget books. Someone is removing knowledge from the system, erasing paths, leaving breadcrumbs not to guide, but to mislead. Clara confirms your fear one rainy afternoon in the soundproof section. She hands you a scrap of old parchment, still warm. "Just found this on the return shelf," she whispers. It's not a book page, it's a memory slip. These are never meant to be loose. Each slip is a physical capture of a thought, too volatile to store in the usual way. They're logged, sealed, and triple warded. This one, it's fresh, and it reads, "The door dreams too." You both stare at it. Then the parchment curls in on itself and vanishes in a puff of cinnamon smoke. Neither of you speaks for a long moment. Eventually, Clara says, "We need to go deeper. Not just into the library, but into its history, back to the origin, the true founding of the Lantern chapter. This time you go to someone who never leaves the archives, Madame Orville, senior librarian of cross-dimensional shelving and unprintable languages. No one knows her real name. Some say she's been here since the first brick was laid. Others claim she was printed from a forbidden press in Paris during a thunderstorm and immediately unionized. Her office exists in theoretical space, literally. You only find it by reading a specific combination of books in the correct emotional state. Hint: Moby Dick plus homesickness equals hallway to Orville. You bring tea. Always bring tea. She studies you over her rimless spectacles and gestures to the sofa. "You smell like vault dust," she says. You sit. She listens as you explain the lantern hums, the missing books, the memory slip, the dreams. Then she nods once. "You're being shepherded," she says simply. You blink. "Like, toward the door?" "No." She leans in. "Toward opening it. Someone is using the lanterns, using you as a key." Clara mutters, "Well, that's just charming." Madame Orville continues, "This has happened before. The library doesn't forget, but it does protect. Sometimes when a door-bound librarian gets too close, the system rewrites their path. Memory edits, reassignments, sometimes even spontaneous obsession with obscure Baltic poetry." "Is that why no one's opened it?" you ask. Orville's expression tightens. "One did. Once." A long pause. "What happened?" "We lost an entire floor," she says. You blink. "Like, temporarily?" "Like," she says. "We don't talk about floor 8. You're silent. "Because you've used the elevator. You've never seen a button for floor 8. Clara mutters, "Historians still argue whether it was physically erased or just emotionally redacted." Orville nods. "Both are correct." She gives you one more thing before you go. A lantern shard, broken from one of the originals, hand-blown, coded, ancient. "You'll know when to use it," she says. She doesn't explain. Of course she doesn't. That night, you and Clara follow the lantern song. Not just the melody, but its movement. The lanterns don't hum randomly. They sink in patterns, forming routes that haven't been walked in decades. It leads you to the Hall of Unused Indices, a vast abandoned space filled with card catalogs from eras before decimal systems and sanity. You pass one labeled Emotional Weather, 1763 to 1912, and another that simply says Things Regretted in Moonlight, and then you find it. A cabinet with no label. Just one drawer. Inside a single card. On it, your name. Below it, one line. Do not let the door choose. Suddenly, the shard in your pocket glows. You hold it up. It vibrates gently. A hidden panel opens in the wall. Beyond it, a corridor pulsing with slow amber light. You glance at Clara. She shrugs. "We've come this far." And you step in. It's not a corridor. It's a bridge. Leonard doesn't answer. He just walks over to a locked cabinet behind the bookshelves, mutters something in High Victorian, which sounds suspiciously like he's scolding the cabinet in rhyme, and pulls out a tattered folder labeled Protocol Chrysanthemum. You can tell by the dust alone that this is not a protocol one activates lightly. He places it on the table and opens it. Inside, schematics, faded notes, a map of the library with symbols you've never seen, spirals, eyes, something that looks suspiciously like a teaspoon. And at the bottom, a single sentence. If the lanterns sing, the door is near. You swallow. What door? Leonard's eyes meet yours. The last one. Clara looks like she might throw her tea. There's another door, she hisses. Leonard nods. The original, the one that leads to whatever it is the library was built to protect, or imprison. No one agrees. Historians still argue whether the door was meant to keep things out, or to keep us in. Lovely, you mutter. So how do we find it? Leonard flips the map. On the back is a musical score, 7 notes, a melody, simple, haunting. Clara hums it, absent-mindedly. The lantern on the table flares white. You all freeze. Leonard whispers, "It's begun." The next few days pass in a blur. You and Clara begin tracking the lanterns, logging their tones, their patterns, the way they shift depending on what books are nearby. You notice a correlation between volumes on chaos theory and brighter flares. Books on etiquette seem to make them flicker nervously, like they're trying to mind their manners. Meanwhile, Leonard teaches you how to shield your thoughts, how to keep memory snatching from happening accidentally. He gives you a ring carved from forgotten oak and a phrase in a dead dialect of Old Archivish, anamnesia enclava. You're told never to say it in the bath wing. No one will explain why. Clara just shudders and mimes tentacles. You begin to dream of lanterns, endless halls of them, glowing in time to heartbeats. Sometimes yours, sometimes not. And in every dream you feel it drawing closer. The door, the one even the library fears. It's not on any map, but you know the lanterns are leading you to it. Whether you're ready or not, it opens without a sound. You brace yourself for the worst, screaming ghosts, archival tentacles, the entire collected works of Dickens hurling themselves at your face. But instead the door sighs. Just a soft exhale, like the library itself is letting go. Beyond it, darkness. But not empty darkness, not absence. This is stored darkness, curated, pressed into shapes and edges, saturated with old knowing. You step inside. The air is syrupy with time. Your skin tingles as if the years are brushing past you like moths. Clara follows close, her hand gripping the lantern shard, which now glows steady blue, the color of probably safe, but don't touch anything without asking. The space you enter isn't a room. It's a vault within the vault, a sealed gallery of knowledge deemed too volatile to catalog. Every wall is lined with glass cabinets, inside them not books, but objects. A silver spoon that loops itself into infinity, a candle that weeps mercury tears, a pair of spectacles that show you how the library sees you back, and in the center, a desk, not ornate, just plain, unassuming. On it, one book, bound in memory fabric, fluid and shifting, its cover pattern changing as you approach. It's unlabeled, untitled. Of course it is. The lantern shard thrums in Clara's hand like a warning. You glance at her. Well, she shrugs. We're already in the forbidden inner sanctum. Might as well keep breaking all the rules. You reach out and touch the cover. It's warm, and it responds. Your name scrawls across the front in real time, followed by Clara's. The book recognizes you, accepts you, and then, in letters too ancient to decipher, Index Librorum Secretum, the secret index. Every thought, memory, and discovery the library chose to bury. You flip it open. The pages are blank, but you feel the information moving beneath the surface like fish under ice, shifting, waiting. You place your hand flat against the page, and suddenly you see a flicker of history unspooling behind your eyelids, a candlelit room in 1852, a circle of librarians seated in robes lined with reflective script. At the center, the first lantern sputtering to life. One speaks. We do not ban books, we protect them, even from ourselves. Another adds, the world is not ready. A third, we must bury the keys inside the library itself. And then, the door. New, incomplete. The plan? Create a fail-safe. A memory-based seal that can only be unlocked by those who've lived within the library long enough to understand it. Not as a building, but as a living archive. You jerk your hand back. The vision fades. Clara's staring at you. You okay? Yeah, you say slowly. I saw the founding, the original seal, the reason for the door. She raises an eyebrow. You nod at the book. It's a lock and a lure. Lovely, she mutters. So we're bait? Only if we take the next step. And you both know what that means. The key keeper. You've heard rumors of him. A ghost? A librarian so old he merged with the system. A cursed intern who never clocked out. No one agrees. Historians still argue whether the keykeeper was a real person or a symbolic construct invented to scare apprentices into reshelving properly. Either way, you'll find him where all forbidden paths lead, the room of unuttered permissions. No one ever admits going there. It's the place where the rules live. Not written, not spoken, known. You find it hidden behind a shelf of cookbooks for imaginary creatures. Clara hums the lantern tune as you pass, and the door slides open, not with a creak, but with the low sigh of surrender. Inside, silence. No books, just paper. Thousands of unsigned permission slips floating mid-air, suspended by unseen threads. Some blank, some blood-stained. One labeled, Request to Breathe during Shelving Week. In the middle, a desk. Behind it, the keykeeper. Not a ghost, not a man, but both. A translucent figure wearing 17 name tags, all with different names, most of them scratched out. He looks up. You're late, Clara frowns. Late for what? He ignores her. You brought the shard? You hold it up. He nods once and gestures to a slot on the desk. You place the shard inside, and the whole room changes. The slips vanish. In their place, books, towering shelves of them arranged not by author or subject, but choice. Left paths, forks in the road, abandoned lives. You stare. The keykeeper says, to unlock the final seal, one must offer a forgotten self. A version of you that could have been, but wasn't. That's the price. You swallow. And if I refuse? You forget everything. The door, the library, Clara. He says it like it's the weather. Clara turns to you. I won't make you choose, but if you do... She hesitates. You already know. You will, because you need to see what lies beyond. The keykeeper gestures. A book floats forward. It's titled with your name, but not this you. A version that stayed home, never joined the library, lived an ordinary life. You hold it. Read the first line. You smile. He bakes. Then you nod and place it on the desk. The lights dim. The door is calling. The door opens itself this time. No touching, no humming. No incantations whispered behind the spice shelf in the archivist's pantry. It just yields. Because now it knows you. You've paid the toll. You've offered up a version of yourself, a ghost self, laid gently on the altar of choice. Clara squeezes your hand. This is absolutely how horror movies start, she mutters. You smile, but it falters as you step forward. The space beyond the door is not a room, nor a hall, nor even a tunnel. It's a memory plane, a long luminous field where time moves sideways and logic droops like wet wallpaper. Here, thoughts don't stay in your head. They hover, float, reflect back at you. Your first thought materializes above your shoulder. Why is it always damp in secret chambers? Good question. One no Victorian librarian ever answered, although some scholars suspect a humidifier conspiracy tied to parchment preservation and soft curls. Clara's first thought hangs near her temple. If we die, I hope someone feeds my plant. It's oddly comforting. You walk. The field shifts beneath your feet, now paved with old lending slips. The ink smudges with each step. Some of them bear familiar names, past librarians, friends, even enemies. One reads, Miss Prescott, April 1863. Borrowed, How to Prepare the Soul for Metaphysical Revolt. Never returned. Stamped. Overdue. You wonder how long these thoughts have been waiting. Soon you reach the center of the plane. Here stands something astonishing. Not a book, not a person. A mirror. Tall, grand, framed in oxidized bronze. You expect to see your own reflection. You don't. Instead, you see the library. All of it. From its first sketch in a dream to its unsteady construction in 1849, hastily approved by Parliament with the footnote, "Don't let them shelve anything French." You see the first lantern spark into being, illuminating a room of skeptics and reformers. You see the founding of the lantern chapter, not with fanfare, but with stubborn silence. And then, you see them, the others who reach the door. One by one, a woman with ink-stained fingers whispering poems in forgotten runes, a boy in a waistcoat collapsing from the weight of infinite indexes, a librarian with violet eyes laughing as the room folded in on itself. None of them made it past this point. The mirror clouded. The door reset. Clara whispers, "Historians still argue whether any of them survived or just became part of the library." You reach for the mirror, and it ripples. You don't pass through it. It passes into you. Suddenly, you know, the library is alive, not metaphorically, not poetically. Actually, its structure is neurological. Every corridor a synapse, every book a neuron. The lanterns, synaptic pulses, gently guiding thoughts where they're needed most. You're not a librarian, you're a memory cell. You turn to Clara, breathless. "It's not a building, it's a brain." She blinks. "A brain that hired us for minimum wage." But she's starting to see it, too. The whispers aren't ghosts. They're misfiring thoughts, the random reclassifications, memory distortions, the tea that tastes like regret and clove. Probably psychosomatic, but also possibly brewed by an idea having an identity crisis. And the door? The library's hippocampus, its memory gate, which means what lies beyond it, is something the library forgot, deliberately. You take Clara's hand. We go together. She nods, and you step forward. The plane vanishes. Now you're in a new space. No walls, no books, just a starless sky and a floor of velvet thought. And in the middle, a figure. You recognize the robe first. Victorian, faded, familiar. It's the librarian from your earlier vision, one of the founders. But she's aged past time. Lines like fault lines, eyes glowing with ink and lantern light. She speaks. "I am the first index." You open your mouth, but she raises a hand. "I chose to stay behind the memory gate, not as punishment, as purpose, to guard what must not return." Clara frowns. "Return from where?" The first index turns, and there it is. A second door, sleeker, sharper. This one is made of stone and pain. The forgotten gate. This leads to the lost wing, she says, the part of the library that went silent after the Floor 8 incident. You feel your heartbeat slow. The rumors were true. The floor wasn't destroyed. It was severed, left to drift in thought space. Clara breathes, and you stayed to guard it. The index nods. Because knowledge wants to be found, even the knowledge that shouldn't. Behind her, you see cracks in the gate. Faint light pulses through, familiar lantern light, but wrong. The melody off by half a beat, the hum too slow, like a lullaby played backwards. The index looks at you. If you open it, you must accept what's inside. You ask, "What if we just leave?" She smiles. Then it stays asleep until someone else comes along and isn't as wise. You and Clara exchange a look. This has never been about solving a mystery. It's about preventing a repeat. You glance down. In your palm, the lantern shard pulses, then breaks in two. One half for you, one for Clara. You nod to her. She exhales, steadies herself, and together you press the shards into the final gate. The air bends, the seal cracks, and for the first time in over a century, Floor 8 begins to remember itself. It doesn't roar open. There's no triumphant swell of music, no cinematic whoosh, no wind tearing through your hair like an unpaid effects intern finally got their moment. The final gate to Floor 8 opens, quietly, like a sigh at the end of a very long sentence, a hush that isn't empty, it's expectant. You step into light that has no source and casts no shadows. The ground feels stable but inconsistent. Your shoes press into something like tile, then parchment, then perhaps soft regret. Clara mutters, "I'm either walking on crushed dreams or someone's discarded thesis." Welcome to Floor 8. You don't remember walking here. That's part of the trick. You've been here before, in some dormant corner of your brain. The corridor unfolds before you as if flipping through an old book you forgot you wrote. Every wall bears traces of something broken. A cataloging system designed for fourth-dimensional documents. A filing cabinet you're pretty sure just blinked at you. A sign that says, "Return all thoughts to proper shelves." Here, everything unfinished lives. Floor 8 wasn't sealed because it was dangerous. It was sealed because it was too effective, too recursive. Librarians who worked here began cataloging not just knowledge, but consequences. You reach a junction. One path leads to the room of accidental predictions, another to the wing of reshelved regrets. You take the middle, the index of self-correcting narratives. The corridor ripples. The walls flash with phrases. She never meant to burn it down. He only asked because he thought she was someone else. They told the story 3 different ways, and all of them were true. Clara trails a hand along the wall. It's rewriting itself. You nod. Every version of every story. She stops suddenly. Wait. You follow her gaze to a plaque, etched into it. Both your names. Beneath, filed under, reawakening. You reach toward it, and the plaque splits. Behind it is a book, not ancient, not dusty, fresh, vibrating slightly like it's trying to breathe. Your name is the title. The pages are filled with events that haven't happened yet, but feel familiar anyway. You flip to a random entry. You will forget the lantern. The library will let you go only to call you back. Clara will wait, but only in the spaces where memory folds. You close it quickly. Your heart feels like it's walking ahead of you. Clara, this isn't just history. It's predictive cataloging. The entire floor is trying to finish us. She steps back. And we've already been written into the archive. A low chime echoes through the corridor. You freeze. A voice, mechanical cold, vaguely condescending, says, "Unstable visitors detected. Autocorrection initiated." From the end of the hall, shapes, not creatures. Pages, rising from the floor, folding into limbs, wrapping around air like origami nightmares. Paper constructs, archivist drones. Clara yells, "Run!" You sprint down the corridor, past the shelves of half-truths and whispering floorboards. The drones are faster, efficient, built for one thing, erasure. You duck into the vault of footnotes. The door slams behind you. Silence. The vault is cold, round, filled with drawers, each labeled with something nonsensical. See Appendix D, if it still exists. Referenced but not cited. Possibly imagined but useful. Clara paces. We're out of options. You shake your head. We're in the one room the drones avoid. She narrows her eyes. Why? You point to a drawer. Pull it open. Inside, a single sentence, handwritten. The drones cannot enter here because they too are footnotes. The drones weren't guardians. They were disclaimers, built to suppress unruly knowledge, to keep it from finishing its thought. You sit down hard. The floor isn't trying to destroy us, it's trying to reclaim us. It thinks we're part of the unshelved. Clara stares at the sentence, then says softly, "So let's finish the thought." You know what she means. You remove the last shard of lantern light from your pocket. It's dull now, spent, but still warm. Together you place it inside the drawer. The sentence glows, and above it a second line appears. But if they write themselves fully, they may remain. The vault begins to shake. Drawers rattle. The sentence stretches into script, into chapters, into you. You are being written, not erased, absorbed. The library has acknowledged your story, and it wants to keep it. But the cost is high. You will always belong here now. Clara looks at you, eyes glowing faintly gold. You ready to be footnotes forever? You smile. As long as we're alphabetized correctly. The vault quiets, the light steadies, and you feel something open, not a door, a space, the place where the secret social lives of Victorian librarians finally finish their footnote. It doesn't crash into your senses or drag you sideways through reality. It welcomes you, like slipping beneath warm water, like finally finding the quiet corner of a loud dream. You and Clara step through. You expect to find shelves. You find a parlor. Not any parlor, a Victorian one. Flickering gas lights, velvet drapes, a faint scent of lemon polish and old paper. 2 armchairs, a silver tea set, a record player humming something Debussy adjacent but slightly off-tempo, like memory trying to hum a tune it almost forgot. At the far end, a fireplace. Above it, the portrait of a woman in librarian's robes. She looks nothing like anyone you've met, but you know her. She's the last librarian to survive floor 8. Her portrait blinks. "About time," she says. Clara freezes. "The painting is talking." You nod. "Yeah, that tracks." You sit in one of the chairs. It conforms perfectly to your shape, like it's memorized you. The woman in the portrait smiles. You've done well. The library accepts you. You lean forward. "What is this place?" "The appendix," she replies. "The part of the library that exists only if you look for it, where librarians retire or are archived." Clara raises an eyebrow. "Retire or archived?" The portrait shrugs. "Same thing, more or less. You're part of the library's memory now." You sip tea. It tastes like things you wish you'd said sooner. The woman in the portrait explains that every century, the lantern chapter reaches a critical point. Too much knowledge, not enough containment. So the library opens the door, tests the candidates, and chooses who gets remembered. Everyone else forgets. "Yes," she says, reading your mind, "when you leave, they won't remember you. Not really. You'll be one of those people they vaguely recall from a shelving rota or an overdue notice. But your story will stay here." Clara sighs. Bit tragic, honestly. The woman nods. It is. But then, so is every good story. You stand and feel something shift in you. You're not flesh. Not entirely. You're indexable. Filed. A story with a spine and a catalog entry that reads, Subject, Memory, Myth, Midnights. You and Clara walk to the edge of the parlor, where the world fades into soft dusk. Is this the end? She asks. You shake your head. Feels more like a bookmark. You reach for the light switch beside the parlor door. Just instinct, something comforting. But instead of switching off the room, it switches on the library. All of it. The floors, the passages, the lost wing, the forgotten thoughts, the books that write back, and the patrons. They feel you now. They pause at certain pages, hear odd whispers between the stacks, notice when the lights flicker a bit more warmly. A few might mutter, That's strange. Did I just hear someone laugh? But they won't see you. They'll feel you. Every now and then a child will return a book too quickly and whisper, It made me dream of someone with gold eyes and a crooked name tag. You'll smile, because you remember, because that's what you are now. Memory. The social lives of Victorian librarians didn't die. They shifted from board meetings and clandestine romances to something subtler. They became the library's conscience, its archive of feeling. And as Clara curls up in the other chair with a volume labeled Speculative Reunions, you finally relax. Let the tea steep. Let the stories rest. Let the lights dim, because your work is finished and your story will be shelved with care. Now the lights grow softer. The gas lamps dim to little golden sighs, and the hum of the record player slows. The fireplace crackles just enough to warm your thoughts, and you feel the chair sink deeper beneath you. Not falling, just settling. Your breath evens out. The words on the pages begin to blur, not from age, but from peace. You did what few ever do. You found the quietest truth at the heart of the noise. You learned that libraries aren't just places where knowledge lives. They're places where it sleeps. And you've become part of its dreaming. Outside the appendix, the rest of the library returns to its rhythm. Late returns, whispered apologies, dust swept by unseen hands. It all continues. But here you rest. You're not gone. You're simply on pause. Let that idea comfort you, the notion that in some far-off nook, in a room with velvet chairs and lemon polish air, a version of you is sipping tea and waiting for the next chapter. No need to rush. The story knows where to find you. So, close your eyes. Let the lantern glow fade gently from your mind. Let the cataloging cease. Let the shelves grow still. And when you dream tonight, maybe you'll dream of a door you forgot you remembered. And it'll open.